Today's brand new episode of Second Breakfast is Volume 5 of our Breakfast Buffet series over on Patreon. It is a big, freewheeling, roundup discussion of some of the greatest recent works of art that have really spoken to us. The full episode is a discussion of The Beekeeper, Anyone But You, The Zone of Interest, and All of Us Strangers. It's some uppers and some downers, but that's just how the month of movies have worked out for us. This clip of the episode is our discussion of All of Us Strangers, the new movie starring Andrew Scott and Paul Mescal. If you want to hear the rest of the discussion and the rest of this whole series of The Breakfast Buffet, which has 5 installments and, I don't know, dozens of works of art we've discussed in that so far, as well as the extra bonus episode we did for the month of February talking about Godzilla -1 minus color, you can subscribe to our Patreon for $2 a month. You can get those brand new episodes, a brand new episode every month, and access to the whole back catalog of bonus episodes that we've done over the past 2 years. Thank you very much for listening. Enjoy this clip. All of Us Strangers. So this is a very different kind of downer. Mm-hmm. This is, it's based on a book from the 80s, I believe, but it is set, I don't know, not modern day, but like kind of modern.
It looked pretty modern to me.
Okay. Yeah. It's a little out of time and space. It's in the same way a stage play can basically be set whenever.
Yeah, felt a lot like a play.
There's a little bit of technology, but almost none. You know, he uses a laptop to write, but you could replace that with whatever.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, so this one, I guess we should set the table for this one too. This is Andrew Scott and Paul Mescal. Andrew Scott, you might know as Moriarty from Sherlock, and Paul Mescal is the male romantic lead in Normal People. Mm. And Andrew Scott moves into a new apartment complex and slowly falls in love with Paul Mescal. Mm-hmm. He's a writer, and he's revisiting moments from his childhood, and he keeps taking these train trips and meeting with this couple. And I guess we have to do mild spoilers just to talk about the concept, because it's
kind of clear in the trailer, so it's not really a spoiler.
It's such a high concept that I think to not talk about the concept is to not talk about the movie.
Right.
So the couple he's meeting with are his parents, who are, I mean, he's time traveling, I guess, sort of, and it's kind of in his head, and you don't really know what's real and what's fake, but he's talking to his parents within the period that they were his age. They died when he was very young.
Yes.
He was closeted at that time. He wasn't out. Mm-hmm. And
he was 11 in the movie. Was 11 when they died.
And they died. So now he's talking to them as an adult.
Yeah, and so he's seeing them as they were right before they died. So it's like they've been like, bottled in time, and they're them from the 80s, basically. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's able to have a lot of these conversations that he couldn't about identity and life and what would happen and what happened to his parents. Yeah. And meanwhile, he's got this relationship unfolding, and he's opening up a lot of things from his past that he had bottled up. And it's fairly incredible drama. Most of the people even that I talk to in real life, not on the podcast, talk about wanting more original movies, wanting movies for adults. Not everything has to be superheroes. Everyone's heard these complaints. They want meaty character roles and roles for actors instead of just legacy sort of superhero figures. This is what we ask for, and I was shocked by this movie. I went in for the actors. I didn't know anything about the concept, but this is so high concept. Mm-hmm. It is uniquely high concept in a way that I would have to go back to like the last couple sci-fi movies I've seen to be this high concept. But it's also shockingly grounded. Like there's a magic trick here where, yes, there's time travel and he's talking to his dead parents, and that feels so surreal and impossible while you're watching it. But when you boil it down to like the call sheet and how they filmed the movie, it's just 4 actors in a room talking, and some of them are wearing different kinds of clothes. Like it's a stage play.
Right. And when he's with Paul Mescal, the romantic interest, there's no time travel happening there. No. It's just like them hanging out in one of their apartments, and that feels very normal and grounded and not high concept at all. But there's still like sort of this like dreamlike quality to it, which helps blend the two halves of this movie. Yeah, I was in it immediately, even though like the second you understand what's going on, you're like, oh, that's impossible. But you know that he's writing a book, or he's writing a play. No, he's writing a screenplay. And so you know that, okay, maybe this is like him as he's visualizing his script. Like this is part of his process. And like you are so in it, and you don't have to even like try to suspend your disbelief. You just are in it, and it makes perfect sense. It's really smoothly and impressively done. I don't know how they managed that, but they did a really good job.
Right, because it feels so easy and natural.
Yeah,
I remember this quote from George R. R. Martin. He was talking about being frustrated with the process of adaptation and trying to write stories that would be filmable, that would work within a normal budget that could be attainable for mainstream TV. He did some TV writing, and he got so frustrated with that process and those limitations and the red tape that he started writing something that was as big as he could go and as huge and epic and magical, and just letting his brain run wild with the full knowledge that this was going to be unfilmable and just the purest excesses of what he ever wanted to do, and that was Game of Thrones. And of course, when that is adapted, it takes 10 million an episode by the end of it to bring that to fruition.
Yeah.
But it has that boundless sense of scale and imagination.
Right.
I felt that sort of release in this script, where it did feel like we were going to all of those places we could conceive.
Yeah.
It just happened to be cheaper to film.
Sure, because there are no dragons. Yeah.
It had that sense of creative abandon. And I think that's the most inspiring sense you can get from a work of art. Because you have this character, and Andrew Scott's on screen for
Almost, I think every scene. Yeah, I think every scene.
It is a showcase for his talents.
Oh, yeah, and he's so good.
He's unbelievably talented. You know that from Sherlock. You know that from Fleabag.
Yeah, he's a Shakespearean actor. Like, you know that he's great.
Anything you see him in, he runs away with the movie.
Yeah.
But he has such an interesting track in this movie because he's got the yearning for Paul Mescal in that sort of real-time relationship arc. And then, of course, he has the yearning for his deceased parents in the throwback scenes. But running those two arcs together, it's this absence and frustration, it's distance and intimacy, and he sells all of that with beautifully written dialogue, but also his physicality and his face. Like, this is one of those roles that looks so genuine and exhausting. Maybe we should clarify that there is, just hearing the description of what this is about could make it feel overly sentimental or Oscar bait or kind of tearjerker. It's none
not.
of those things.
No.
It has the feel of the sincere indie drama that it is.
Yeah.
But it in no point does it feel like awards bait.
No, yeah, and it doesn't feel saccharine or overly sentimental either. It's pretty like it's upfront with what it's doing, you know?
The script is remarkably smart. I think it's Andrew Haig. I might be messing up one of those. Is the writer-director who's adapting from the novel from the 80s. And dealing with sort of ghosts and flashbacks and romance and identity, we've had a lot of those sort of movies, especially in the last 10 years. And I was so impressed by how All of Us Strangers avoids any of the kind of cliches or obvious routes to go down in any of its storylines, while still making the ending feel inevitable.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And it wasn't like it was trying to throw curveballs and throw us off balance and surprise us and shock us and twist us into pretzels. But the thing that, like nothing in the last 10 years that I could compare to this movie, I would compare to this movie. The thing I left the theater thinking about was A Christmas Carol.
Yes, it did. We talked about that. It felt a lot like that. Yeah, just like in that way you like visiting these old moments of your past and being unable to change them, but still the act of watching them and reliving them causes a change in you. Do you know? Yeah, it felt a lot like that.
It's these characters
like a fable almost in the way that A Christmas Carol does. Yeah.
It's these character set pieces, and there's almost a Christopher Nolan element here. If he were still making movies on this scale like he did with Memento or any of those earlier films, I feel like he could have made this because there is such a preoccupation with time. Yes. And I think that's where the Dickens comparison comes in, because we're dealing with the past being his parents and the future being this unfolding relationship. And it's almost at the expense of the present.
Yes.
And you could say his parents, there are characters you could classify as the three ghosts if you wanted to, but it's so much about time and perspective and price.
Well, and even Andrew Scott's character is almost this Scrooge-like figure where he's like he's very cut off.
Stunted.
He doesn't really have any deep relationships. He lives alone. He's very solitary. He's like, and part of it is that he's in this apartment building that's like new, and so there's almost nobody else in the building, and so he's incredibly isolated and kind of, I mean, he's not grumpy in the way that Scrooge is, but he doesn't have deep connections with anybody. And largely that's because of the death of his parents when he was so young. So yeah, that comparison totally
But they
works.
both self-isolate because of an emotional block or trauma.
Right, yeah.
So it's the most sympathetic Scrooge I've seen.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. I found this one incredibly moving in a different way, I guess, than Zone of Interest, but they're incredibly different kinds of movies.
Yeah. I also feel like there aren't a lot of stories that will be about romance and relationship with your parents like at the same time. Like usually they kind of like do one or the other, because thinking about your parents isn't sexy, but then when you're trying to focus on your parents, romance feels like sort of, I don't know, flimsy and not important, right? But like it melded them together so well.
And it's not a rom-com, so
No.
maybe this comparison is wrong, but it had this freshness and inspiration that felt like it revitalized a drama, indie, identity-based kind of reckoning with your past, sort of, gripping drama. It reminded me a little bit of About Time. And the way that
I loved that movie.
By throwing in some pseudo time travel elements, I felt like that revitalized rom-coms in the same way this revitalized the unflinching personal turmoil indie drama.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I forgot how good About Time was. I wouldn't even call that a rom-com. I would call that just a romance.
Okay, then that makes them
it's
more
of a romance.
Yeah.
Because it's more serious than a rom-com. And it's also, I think, significantly less like predictable and tropey than a rom-com.
But I could see these two movies sort of on the shelf next to each other.
Yeah, I know a lot. I know what you mean. Yeah.
And Andrew Scott didn't get nominated for the Oscar. He's been nominated for everything else. It's award season internationally, so we're seeing all of these listed nominations come up, but I thought he was just groundbreaking.
He was spectacular.
Here.
So was Paul Mescal. He was excellent too.
And it's more impressive when this happens for someone like Andrew Scott, who I'm already incredibly impressed by. Mm-hmm. When I see him blow me away and
again
raise the bar for the third or fourth time, I think that's sort of more impressive. But yeah, he was absolutely stunning. Yeah. And Paul Mescal's great too.
And it was also just like a beautiful looking movie. The way it's shot, the lighting, the color choices, like it's a gorgeous movie in all ways.
It feels sort of timeless. It evokes the stage play thing without leaning on that too hard. Right. It was just, for a movie that's dealing with such difficult, sensitive subject matter, it somehow feels so easy to move through. It somehow feels like it's working with a light touch.
Yeah.
And even when it hits those most devastating moments, there are flashes when he's with his parents where the camera will cut and he'll be his 10-year-old self.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it is done, it's not done with a sweeping, soaring, tearjerker musical cue.
Right.
It feels so quiet and natural. It felt like a private movie that was being screened for us.
Yeah.
It felt like a home movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was something.
I know what you mean.
There was something.
It was really intimate and really personal.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was a vulnerability to this movie that I don't recognize that much in modern filmmaking.
Yeah, I think a lot of movies really want to be big and epic and sweeping, and those can be great and fun, especially when done really well. But it felt different.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, it was really, really good. Intimate in a way that a play feels. Mm-hmm. Plays often feel very intimate. So All of Us Strangers was really excellent. And to hear the rest of this episode where we talk about The Zone of Interest, Anyone But You, and The Beekeeper, you can subscribe to our Patreon, patreon.com/secondbreakfastpod. The link is in the description below. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you on Friday.